The once brilliant student is nothing like he used to be. Well, I guess it's to be expected from a high school graduate. Jason sneered at me after glancing at my face. Even though I had been enjoying the college reunion, his arrival ruined the mood instantly. As Jason's obnoxious behavior and loud laughter caught everyone's attention, the people around us started murmuring. "You didn't end up with much of a job either, did you? You should just go home and stop pretending you're not broke. Oh, by the way, I'm with that famous company." After mocking me, he launched into his usual self-promotion, just like old times. Honestly, it's been years, and he still hasn't changed. I sighed in exasperation. Just then, another person joined the conversation. "Hey, Jason. Do you even know who you're talking about?" She turned to me and smiled. That smile was as beautiful as ever, capturing my heart just like it did back then. When her vividly colored lips revealed my true identity, the room buzzed with astonishment, and Jason collapsed to his knees, stunned. "My name is Alex. I'm just an average guy, except for being a bit taller than most. With black-framed glasses and slightly long bangs, my appearance, far from fashionable, often gives people the impression that I'm a nerd or someone who looks like he studies a lot. And to be honest, I do consider myself pretty good at studying. I attended college thanks to scholarships. My parents divorced, so it was just my mom, Sarah, and me living modestly. Despite this, I had a crush like any other person. It all started when I ended up sitting next to a classmate in a seminar, and I began helping her with her studies. Her long, slender limbs and small face made her look like a model, with slightly downturned eyes and a small mole near her eye that added a touch of sensuality. She had a mature aura that made it hard to believe she was the same age as me. Her name was Emily. Emily wasn't just beautiful on the outside, she had a kind heart as well. While many people avoided or frowned at my unkempt appearance, Emily always looked me straight in the eye when we talked. Even when my nerves made it hard to converse smoothly, she never showed any sign of ridicule. Emily always waited patiently, her gentle eyes encouraging me. Every time she gazed at me with those clear eyes, my heart pounded so loudly that I feared she would notice my feelings for her. Emily, who was popular for her beauty, and me, quiet and often labeled a nerd. It was obvious that we didn't match, but I was in love with her. I spent months unable to muster the courage to confess my feelings. Usually, we studied in the campus library or a cafe, but one day I forgot something at home, and we ended up studying in my room instead. My mom always came home late. That day, I was excited about the time I would get to spend alone with Emily in my room, thinking my mom would be late as usual. But of course, things didn't go as planned. My mom came home much earlier than expected. I almost blurted out, "Why today of all days?" But instead, I introduced Emily to my mom. Of course, as just a friend. However, for some reason, my mom got the wrong idea and exclaimed, "I can't believe you brought home such a beautiful girl," and went into full-on hostess mode. But we were just a poor, single-parent household. There wasn't much we could do. My mom did her best to prepare a meal, simple as it was, with the limited resources we had. Even though it wasn't anything fancy, both Emily and my mom seemed to enjoy the meal. That day, Emily's expression seemed softer than usual, and it wasn't just my imagination. As the three of us sat around the table, Emily quietly said, "This reminds me of when my mom was still alive." Emily lost her mother to illness when she was in middle school, and since then, she's lived with her busy father. Perhaps the similar family situations helped to bring Emily and me closer together. I think my mom must have felt something, too. "Emily, you're welcome to come here anytime. You can even think of me as your mom if you like," she said. Half joking, but with a sincere look in her eyes. Emily, surprised, froze with wide eyes. "Mom, come on. If Emily and Alex get married, I'll get to be her other mom too. That might be a great idea. What are you saying?" "Sorry about that, Emily." I tried to stop my mom's slightly overzealous comments and glanced over at Emily. "What? Emily? Are you okay?" But the next moment, Emily started to cry. Seeing her tears, I panicked, but she looked at us and smiled through her tears. "Thank you. I'm really happy." Hearing those words, my mom, with a relieved expression, gently patted Emily's back until her tears stopped. After that, we finished dinner without any issues, and since it was getting late, I decided to walk Emily home. Even though we didn't have much time alone, perhaps because we had shared a meal together and I had seen her tears, I felt closer to Emily than ever before. Maybe that's why I was more nervous than usual, feeling like I needed to say something, but no topics came to mind. The only sound on the quiet night road was the echo of our footsteps. Emily was the first to break the silence. "Sorry for staying so late today." "No, I'm the one who should apologize." My mom was a bit pushy, and she said some weird things. "You can just forget about it." I recalled my mom's earlier comment. "If you two got married." I'd be thrilled if that happened, but unless Emily felt the same way, it was just wishful thinking. And the chances of her liking someone like me were incredibly slim. In other words, my mom's words were nothing more than a fantasy. But I thought it would be nice if that happened. What? I had just convinced myself it was impossible, yet here Emily was, saying something I never expected, causing me to stop in my tracks. A few steps ahead, Emily turned around, her long hair swaying. "Alex, I like you. Didn't you notice?" In the quiet night, her gentle voice echoed. Bathed in the moonlight, she looked like a goddess or an angel from a story or painting, so beautiful that I couldn't help but stare. "What about you, Alex? How do you feel about me?" Sensing her anxiety from my silence, her voice wavered slightly. Hearing that, I clenched my fists. I have to tell her how I feel. "I like you too, Emily. Will you go out with me?" "Yes." Emily smiled. A tear glistened at the corner of her eye as it fell. She looked so beautiful that before I knew it, she had jumped into my arms, looking up at me. I gently wiped away the tears from her cheek. Emily let out a soft, happy laugh, her shoulders shrugging as if tickled. Overcome with affection for her, I gently wrapped my arms around her slender body. And just like that, Emily and I began dating. Even now, it feels like a miracle, something I can hardly believe. But every time I see Emily smiling beside me, I realize that this is real, and my heart fills with warmth. Our friends celebrated our relationship, but not everyone was happy that I, of all people, ended up with the popular Emily. Among them, Jason's attitude was especially obvious. Jason was the son of a high-ranking executive at some company, with good looks and decent grades. He was confident, with his wealth, looks, and future prospects all lined up, and his usual behavior was full of snide remarks. Honestly, he wasn't the type of person I wanted to be around, so I tried to avoid him as much as possible. Since Emily and I started dating, though, my school life had been going smoothly. I found something I wanted to do in the future, and my studies became more focused than ever. Every day felt fulfilling. But it seemed that my life wasn't meant to go so smoothly. In the fall of my sophomore year, my mom, who had always been so energetic, suddenly collapsed. She was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency surgery. The surgery was successful, but the doctors explained that long-term treatment and possibly more surgeries would be needed in the future. All of which would come with enormous costs, far beyond what our poor single-parent household could afford. "Mom." My mom lay unconscious in the hospital bed. I had always believed she would stay healthy, that she would never fall ill, but of course, parents are human too. The hand I held after so long felt much thinner than I remembered. It was only now, in this moment, that I truly understood the hardships she had endured. And I made up my mind. After all the years my mom spent supporting me, it was my turn to support her. "I'll handle everything, Mom. You just rest." I whispered these words to my sleeping mom before leaving the hospital room. From that day on, my life changed completely. I spent every free moment working part-time jobs. I told Emily about my mom's situation, but since our time together was my emotional support, I squeezed in moments to see her between school and work. But the new lifestyle quickly took its toll on my body. With late-night shifts messing up my sleep schedule, I started being late for both dates and classes. Even when I met up with Emily, I was so sleep-deprived that my mind was foggy, and she often worried, saying, "Alex, are you okay? You don't have to push yourself so hard." Every time we met, all I could do was apologize. This exhausting lifestyle continued until one day. "We should break up." Emily told me this as I arrived late to yet another meeting. Her words swirled around in my tired mind, unable to process them fully. She looked at me with a sad expression before walking away. All I could do was watch her leave in silence. Of course, I didn't want to break up with Emily. My feelings for her hadn't changed. In fact, they had only grown stronger over time. But recently, I couldn't make time for her, couldn't keep my promises. And on top of that, I had no money. Being with a guy like me must only bring her pain. I could understand why she had given up on me. I was barely holding it together as it was. Losing the one person who had been my support, I quickly fell into a state of apathy. A few days after our breakup, Jason somehow heard about it and came to see me. He was dressed in expensive clothes and wearing a flashy watch. In contrast, I was wearing cheap, fast fashion aimed at young people. "Alex, I heard you broke up with her." "Yeah," I responded weakly, and Jason exaggeratedly patted my shoulder. "Someone like her needs everything to be just right." "Well, at least you got to have a nice dream, now it's time to focus on the real world." He said what he wanted and then left. Someone like her needs everything to be just right. Jason's words cut deep into my heart. With my mom's ongoing hospital bills and treatment costs, there was no way I could afford to take Emily on nice dates or buy her gifts. I realized I no longer had the right to be by Emily's side. It became too painful to even look at her. So, I decided to drop out of college. While my breakup with Emily played a part, the main reason was financial. No matter how many part-time jobs I took on, there was only so much I could earn. And it seemed pointless to continue paying for college when I couldn't afford the time or money. If I quit now, at least the amount I'd have to repay for my scholarship would be less. So, I chose to find a job instead. Finding a job in the middle of the year with only a high school diploma was incredibly tough. Unsurprisingly, there was no way I could land a job with good pay or benefits, and I eventually ended up at a so-called black company. I worked from morning till night, with verbal abuse from my boss being a daily routine. As a college dropout with just a high school diploma, I became an easy target, and my coworkers mocked me every day. On top of that, whenever I went out for sales, I'd see students my age walking happily around town, enjoying life. Living like this day after day, my spirit was gradually worn down. Why is this happening to me? This isn't how it was supposed to be. These thoughts kept swirling in my mind. Recently, I had been dreading visiting my mom in the hospital, overwhelmed by various emotions. Even after I told her that Emily and I had broken up, my mom kept bringing up Emily's name. She mentioned her so many times that I finally snapped. "It makes me feel miserable when you mention Emily, so please stop." My mom apologized quietly, saying, "I'm sorry." Since that day, she never brought up Emily again, but it made visiting her feel awkward. By the time I found a job, 2 months had passed since our breakup, but I still had feelings for Emily. That's why I didn't want to think about her. I didn't want to remember that day we broke up. I still dream about it. Those happy times I spent with Emily. How can I get her back? That thought occupied my mind every time I dreamed of her. 7 years have passed since then, and today was the college reunion. The hotel where it was being held was bustling with people. At 27, everyone looked sharp in their suits, but as soon as we started talking, it felt like old times. Even though I had dropped out and lost touch with everyone, they still treated me just as they had back then. And I naturally found myself joining their lively circle. After a while, there was some commotion near the entrance. I looked over and saw someone who immediately caught my eye. It was the person I had wanted to see. "It's been a while, Alex." "Emily, yeah, it's been a while." She was beautiful back then, but age had only added to her charm. We seemed to stare at each other for a moment, but then a familiar voice interrupted. "Emily, you're here." "Oh, Jason." Jason pushed through the crowd that had gathered around Emily. As always, he was decked out in designer brands from head to toe. "I was hoping to see you today, so I made sure to look my best." "You're as beautiful as ever. Wait, is that Alex?" Jason, who had been focused solely on Emily, finally noticed me and sounded surprised. "Good to see you too, Jason." When I greeted him, he frowned and made no effort to hide his displeasure. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "What do you mean?" "It's the reunion, right?" Jason's question, so obvious in nature, left not only me but also everyone around us looking puzzled. Yeah, it's the reunion. The fee's not exactly cheap, so are you sure you can afford to attend? I mean, you dropped out because you couldn't afford to stay in school, right? Jason's words caused a stir among the group. But, oblivious to the growing tension around him, Jason kept talking. No matter how smart you were in school, with just a high school diploma, you couldn't have landed a decent job, right? I've been worried. Thinking you must be having a tough time. He slung an arm around my shoulders and smirked. Perhaps he was emboldened by the reunion atmosphere, but his words were pretty insulting. I see you're still the same. I started to say, but before I could, our classmates around us spoke up, looking at Jason with exasperation. Jason, don't you know? Alex is filthy rich now. What? What are you talking about? Seriously, you didn't know? Alex is the CEO of NH Systems. After dropping out of college, I quickly realized the company I worked for wasn't worth my time. Being mocked for being a high school graduate and a dropout was infuriating. So I decided to put my college studies to good use and started a systems company. The early days were tough, but eventually, the system we developed started getting adopted by various companies. And after securing a contract with a major corporation, our reputation skyrocketed. From there, our business grew rapidly, and now I'm a CEO with an annual income of over $500,000. Well, I've been through a lot. Thanks to that, I'm doing pretty well for myself now. Alex, a CEO. That can't be right. Well, since you were concerned about me, I should at least thank you. Oh, and by the way, are you all heading to an after party later? It's on me. Let's all have a good time. My offer was met with cheers from the crowd. Even the girls who had ignored me back in the day were squealing with excitement. In no time, a crowd gathered around me, and as it swelled, Jason seemed to disappear from sight. As I chatted with my classmates, I made my way toward Emily. Emily, you're coming to the after party, right? I smiled and reached for her hand, but she subtly pulled away. Maybe she was just feeling shy after all this time. Yeah. I'm planning to go. Great. Don't worry about anything, just order whatever you like. Thanks. Although I couldn't talk much with Emily after that, the after party was a huge success and ended without a hitch. I paid for everything as I had promised, but it wasn't a big deal. It probably cost less than a recent business dinner with a client. With that thought, I started looking for Emily. Emily. When I called out to her, she looked a bit confused. I didn't get much chance to talk to you. Would you like to chat for a bit? I can drive you home. Sure. I'm glad. I've been holding back on drinking because I plan to drive you. I see. Her hesitant reply caught my attention, but I walked with her to the car anyway. She remained silent the entire time. I escorted her to the passenger seat and then sat in the driver's seat. Once I closed the door, the noise from outside quieted down, and I felt like we finally had a moment to ourselves. Are you still living with your parents? No, but I told them I'd be coming home tonight. I see. I'll drive you there, then. Please. It would take about 30 minutes to get to her parents' house. Although I was a bit disappointed that we wouldn't have much time together, I was still thrilled to be spending time with Emily after so long. Alex, you've changed. Really? You seem more confident than before. Well, yeah. If you hesitate, you lose in this competitive world. I've had enough of being looked down on. Now, I'm a company president with plenty of money to my name. There are plenty of people who respect me. I'm not the timid, indecisive person I used to be. Surely, Emily must prefer a reliable man like that. I took her words as a compliment and felt quite pleased with myself. However, Emily's expression remained tense as she looked straight ahead. How's your mom doing? I was caught off guard by her question, as I had been about to talk about my company and the new house I had just bought. But considering how close Emily and my mom had been when we were together, I figured it was only right to tell her how my mom was doing now. Mom's doing fine. The first hospital didn't have the right facilities, so I had her transferred. The new hospital is top-notch, with 24/7 care. so I can rest easy knowing she's in good hands. Do you visit her often? Visiting? It's fine. The nurses are there for her. In reality, I hadn't been visiting much since she was transferred to the new hospital. The care there is thorough, and they'd contact me if anything happened. Besides, I'd been too busy with work to find the time to go to the hospital. Don't you think your mom would be happy if you visited her? I've given her a tablet and a phone, so we video chat and exchange messages now and then. She's got a private room, so she's comfortable. And the food there is great too. I went on to tell Emily about the hospital's impressive facilities and the excellent reputation of the doctors. Before I knew it, we had arrived near Emily's parents' house. This is fine. Thanks for the ride. Okay. I stopped the car, and Emily got out. Emily, wait. I quickly got out and called after her as she started to walk away. There's something I want to talk about. Please, hear me out. Emily turned around slowly, her expression still distant and cold. But I didn't let that deter me. I decided to tell her how I felt. The feelings I'd been holding onto for the past 7 years. Emily, I've never stopped loving you. Back then, I was weak and broke, and I probably only made you worry. So, I understood why you left me. But now, things are different. Now, I can give you anything you want. I can fulfill any wish you have. So, can't we start over? I had finally gathered everything I lacked back then. Now, I believed I was worthy of Emily. I looked straight into her eyes, confident that I would see that familiar smile return. I truly believed she would smile at me once again. But I'm sorry, she said, her face still hard. What? My voice came out hoarse, as if it wasn't even mine. My mouth went dry, and I couldn't speak properly. I'm sorry, she repeated, then turned and ran off. I had worked so hard, gaining everything I lacked back then. So why couldn't I hold her in my arms now? Just when I thought I had everything. Why was I still missing something? I stood there, staring in the direction she had run, unable to move. 3 days after that encounter with Emily, I was still in shock, struggling to focus on my work. That's when I received a call from the hospital, and I rushed there as fast as I could. Mom! I burst into the hospital room, only to find my mother lying in bed, with a nurse checking her IVs and other equipment. There was no sense of urgency in the air, and the soft-colored flowers in the basket beside her bed were blooming beautifully. Sarah, your son's here. That's wonderful. I'll come back later, the nurse said to my mom before nodding at me and leaving the room. Once she was gone, I walked over to my mom's side. I got a call from the hospital. Mom smiled warmly at me, showing no signs of the kind of condition that would warrant an emergency call. Oh, really? Maybe it's because I wasn't feeling well earlier. I told them not to call, but they must have been thoughtful. I'm sorry about that. She gave me a slightly embarrassed smile. For some reason, her light-heartedness irritated me. It's been a while. Was it a month ago when you last visited? I'm so happy to see you, Alex. You look tired, though. Are you getting enough sleep? I know work is busy, but you really should take care of yourself. Enough already. If I don't work, I can't pay for this place. I'm doing this for you, so just don't lecture me, okay? I raised my voice more than I intended. I knew my mom was only concerned about me. But my work was, in part, to cover the cost of her hospital bills. So when she commented on my actions, it felt like criticism, and I lashed out. You're right. I'm sorry. It's because you're working so hard that I'm able to stay here. Thank you. She apologized, looking guilty, but even as I felt a pang of guilt myself, I couldn't stop the harsh words from spilling out. I had a lot of work today, and then I got called here. What's the deal, seriously? I'm sorry. But I was really happy you came. Really? I felt an overwhelming irritation. I wasn't sure if I was angry at my mom or myself. I knew I'd been neglecting my visits, using work as an excuse. I knew she must be feeling lonely. And maybe the unresolved feelings from my recent encounter with Emily were making it worse. Consumed by these negative emotions, I felt a sudden urge to blame my mom for everything that had gone wrong. After all, I'd spent years feeling lonely because she was never around. I didn't deserve to be blamed for not visiting for just a month. Realizing where my thoughts were going, I managed to swallow my words at the last moment. I'm going back to work. I stood up, avoiding her gaze. If I didn't leave, I might say something even more hurtful. As I headed toward the door, I heard her say, "Take care," but I didn't turn around as I left the room. Thanks to my quick return and the support from my team, there was no delay in my work. But with thoughts of my mom and Emily lingering in my mind, I couldn't focus. Almost a week had passed since my last visit to see my mom. I knew I should apologize, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling inside me. Unable to bring myself to go see her, I buried myself in work to avoid thinking about it. Then, my phone rang again. It was the hospital. To be honest, my first thought was, again? I hesitated to answer, and the call went to voicemail. I sighed and played the message. "Your mother's condition has suddenly worsened. Please come to the hospital." Though my chest tightened slightly at the news, I dismissed it as nothing serious, remembering the last time I had been called. Still, I couldn't ignore it. I quickly rearranged my schedule and headed to the hospital. It was midday, and the hospital was bustling with people waiting at the reception and billing desks. Everything seemed normal, just like any other day. Or at least, it should have been. But then, "Are you Sarah's son? Your mother has been moved to the ICU." "What? ICU? This can't be happening." But she was so full of life just last week, even before that. "Please, stay strong." The nurse's stern voice snapped me back to reality. "Your mother is stable for now, thanks to the quick action of a visitor who noticed the sudden change in her condition. We were able to take appropriate measures in time. Please, follow me." She offered me a reassuring smile as she guided me toward the ICU. "Thank you. I appreciate it." Though my mind was still reeling, her words, "stable," gave me a glimmer of relief as I followed her to the ICU. "Is that Emily?" To my surprise, I saw Emily standing there. "Alex." There was a look of relief on her face when she saw me. "She was the one who noticed your mother's condition," the nurse explained. "What? Really?" "I came to visit and noticed she was struggling, so I immediately called for a nurse," Emily said. "She's been coming to visit Sarah regularly since she was transferred here." Sarah always seemed so happy on the days Emily visited. The nurse added. "I didn't know that." "Wait, were those flowers in my mom's room from you, Emily?" "Yes. I thought it might brighten your mom's day, considering how long she's been in the hospital." The flowers in my mom's room. I remembered how they were regularly changed, with different arrangements and baskets each time. I had assumed they were from my mom's friends or colleagues, so I never thought to ask. But to think that Emily had been the one bringing them. "Emily, thank you so much for everything you've done for my mom. She's safe today because you were there. I really appreciate it." I bowed deeply to her. "Please, Alex, don't bow like that," Emily exclaimed, rushing over to me. When I lifted my head, she was standing close, right beside me. "Emily." "Alex." Her expression was no longer the tense one from before, but the familiar face of Emily that I knew so well. As we gazed into each other's eyes, the nurse let out a soft chuckle. Startled by the sound, both of us looked down in embarrassment, feeling a bit shy. "This isn't the place for that. Please, come inside. Your mother is sleeping now, so please be quiet." Normally, only family members are allowed. But Sarah specifically requested that Emily be allowed in, so Dr. Anderson has granted special permission. The nurse said as she led us into the ICU. "I'm sorry, but visits are limited to about 10 minutes. After that, Dr. Anderson will meet with you, Alex, to discuss the surgery and future treatment options in a separate room," she added before leaving us alone. Emily and I sat in the chairs next to my mom's bed. The room was filled with the sterile sounds of medical equipment, and my mom lay there, connected to various tubes and wires. I let out a sigh of relief when I saw her chest gently rising and falling. Even though I had been told she was sleeping, I couldn't relax until I saw it with my own eyes. Thank goodness. But why did her condition suddenly get so bad? Emily shook her head slowly. The truth is, she's been getting worse bit by bit. But your mom didn't want you to worry. She told me, Alex is busy with work. So I don't want to add to his burden. Please, don't tell him. What? But you knew, didn't you, Emily? Yes. Your mom was so kind to me, even after we started dating. And with my own mom gone, I began to see your mom as a real mother to me. And she treated me like a daughter. Even after we broke up, that didn't change. I'd visit her whenever I could. And we'd talk about all sorts of things, including her condition. I see. Wow. I never knew you two were so close. I had known that my mom cared deeply about Emily and that Emily cherished my mom. But I had no idea they had maintained such a close relationship even after our breakup. I certainly hadn't expected that my mom would confide in Emily about her condition in ways she never did with me. It seems like my mom and you did for each other what I couldn't, I said. Alex. Thank you, Emily. For everything. I smiled at Emily. But her expression twisted in pain. I told your mother about our breakup too, Alex. She just listened quietly and gently patted my back. Just like she did the first time we met, so kind and warm. Back then, I was immature, and I didn't know how to ease your struggles or how to help you. I was scared that I might become a burden to you instead of a support. You were so overwhelmed with college and all those part-time jobs. I felt lost. Hearing this truth from Emily left me speechless. I had always believed she left because I couldn't be a proper boyfriend, because I couldn't offer her anything. That's why I worked so hard to make myself someone worthy of her. I had the status of being a CEO and the wealth that came with it. A job that earned me respect from others. I found a hospital where I could entrust my mom's care with confidence, and I even managed to free up more time in my schedule. I thought I had finally become someone who could stand beside Emily, but I was completely wrong. Your mom was always worried about you, Alex. She'd say, he's just like me, trying to do everything at once and never knowing when to stop. I'm scared he'll push himself too hard and get sick. She was always thinking about you. As Emily shared the things my mom had said, I felt a surge of warmth in my chest. Everything she told me was filled with my mom's love and concern, and it made me realize just how much I had been blind to it. Even though she was going through so much with her treatments, she never complained. She always said, if Alex is working so hard, I need to keep going too, and she'd smile. Seeing that, I realized that this is what a mother's love is: huge, warm, and endlessly deep. Mom. Without realizing it, I reached out and held my mom's hand. Her wrist was even thinner than it had been when she first collapsed, and a sharp pain stabbed through my chest. Mom had always been like this. She put herself last, always smiling to keep me from worrying. But in reality, she had been pushing herself to the point of collapse. I knew that. I had realized it back then. But I was repeating the same mistake. I really was a fool. As I was lost in regret, Emily placed her hand gently on top of mine. Our eyes met. Her expression was calm, her gaze tender. Seeing your mom like that made me regret so much too, Alex. I kept thinking about all the things I should have done or said when my own mom was alive. But I can't go back and change that now. Though, you still have time, don't you? Emily squeezed my hand gently. It's okay, Alex. It's not too late. The moment those words reached me, my vision blurred with tears. Mom. There's still so much I want to do for you, so much I need to say. Please, get better. I'm begging you. I didn't know if my sleeping mother could hear me. But I prayed with all my heart for her recovery. And I felt sure that Emily, sitting beside me, was praying just as hard. Mom's condition had worsened significantly, and Dr. Anderson recommended surgery while she still had the strength. Placing our hopes in Dr. Anderson's promise to do everything he could, the surgery was scheduled and performed right away. Emily and I continued to pray together for my mom's recovery. Our hands tightly clasped in each other's. And the surgery was a success. When Mom finally opened her eyes and our gazes met, I whispered, "Mom, you did great." Emily, sitting beside me, nodded in agreement. "Alex." "Emily." Mom smiled with relief as she looked at us. Seeing that smile, the tears I had been holding back finally burst forth. I wanted to apologize for everything, so I opened my mouth to speak. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything. I've been so blind to all that you've done for me, putting yourself last, always thinking of me first. And It's okay, Alex. I know I made you go through a lot, ever since the divorce from your father. I should have been more in tune with your feelings. I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry, Alex." "Mom." "But I know you care, Alex. I know you've been doing your best for me, that you've been worried about me. And today, you and Emily prayed for me. I'm the luckiest mom in the world." My mother smiled gently as she spoke those words. The moment I saw that warm smile, the floodgates opened, and I began to cry uncontrollably. I wept like a child, sobbing loudly. Looking back, I might have been shedding the tears I had held back since childhood. As I cried, my mother gently stroked my head with her frail hand. It wasn't just me. Both my mother and Emily were also crying. After the three of us had a good cry, a nurse came to check on my mom and, seeing our tear-streaked faces, seemed surprised but said nothing, understanding the situation. When she confirmed that my mother's post-operative condition seemed stable, both Emily and I breathed a sigh of relief. Though we wanted to stay with her longer, we were encouraged to leave so my mom could rest and regain her strength after the surgery. "I'll come back tomorrow," I told her. With tearful eyes, my mom smiled and replied, "I'll be waiting." When we left the hospital, the sky was already dark. We walked side by side toward the parking lot. "Emily, it's only now that I've realized just how wrong I've been about everything," I confessed. Emily stopped walking and turned to face me. "I thought you broke up with me because you were fed up." Back then, I was so overwhelmed, so exhausted, both mentally and physically. The only thing keeping me going was you, Emily. That's why I didn't want to cut back on our time together. But I couldn't do anything for you as a boyfriend, and I felt so worthless. So when you suggested we break up, I understand," Emily whispered. "I never imagined that you suggested breaking up because you were worried about me. I thought that if I just made enough money, I could solve everything with my mom and with you. I threw myself into growing my company, and as it succeeded, I started thinking like the very people I used to despise, the person with status and money is the one who matters. I got caught up in that mindset, thinking I could control everything, but I was wrong." Emily listened quietly as I spoke. She had always been like that. Back when we used to study together before we started dating, when we were a couple, and even now, when I was at my lowest. No matter how awful I was, Emily always listened to me with an open heart, facing me head-on. Back then, when everything was falling apart and I wanted to run away, maybe if I had talked to Emily like this, our future could have been different. But that's just a dream now. But thanks to you and my mom, I've realized what's truly important. So, I'm going to take a step back and think about what I need to do and what I want to do. Once I've sorted it all out, I'll move forward again." Emily smiled softly. "I know you can do it, Alex. I'll be cheering you on." Emily smiled as she said this. As I admired the beauty of her smile, a sharp pain pierced my chest. "I'll be cheering you on." Those words drove home the reality that we could no longer walk this path together. All I could manage was a quiet thank you. "Alex." Emily's voice was filled with concern as she called my name. I forced a smile as I fought back the tears threatening to spill over. "Thank you for being there for my mom and for everything you've done." "I can never thank you enough, Emily. And I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean the world to me if you could keep visiting my mom. I'll be there too, but I know she'd be so happy to see you." "Of course. Only if it's not too much trouble." "Of course. I'd love to keep visiting your mom. It makes me happy to see her too, so I'll keep coming by." "Thank you, Emily." I had said everything I needed to say. And with that, it felt like this was truly the end. Just as I was about to say my goodbyes, Emily took a step closer to me. The Alex I see now, you're just like the Alex I loved so much back then. What? I have something I want to tell you too, Alex. Will you listen? I was taken aback by her sudden offer, but I nodded. I've always regretted saying let's break up. At the time, I thought it was the best thing to do, but my heart was always elsewhere. Perhaps she was recalling that moment. Emily's eyes wavered, catching the moonlight, which made them glimmer softly. I could never forget you, Alex. I was, of course, worried about your mom, but deep down, I also hoped that maybe we could start over. When we met again, you had changed so much that I got scared and ran away. But now I see that you're still the same Alex, kind and straightforward. Just like before. Emily, does that mean? I still love you, Alex. Didn't you realize? With a soft smile, Emily said those words. In that moment, I was reminded of the night we first started dating. The moonlight illuminated her, making her look so beautiful that I couldn't take my eyes off her. I clenched my fist and looked straight into her eyes. I love you too, Emily. I've never been able to forget you. Will you be with me again? Yes. Emily threw herself into my arms. And I gently held her close. You're still the same, Alex, kind, a bit clumsy, but always sincere and someone who looks at me straight in the eyes. You haven't changed at all since the day we met. She whispered as she looked up at me. Her teary eyes meeting mine. Our faces drew closer, and we shared a kiss. And just like that, Emily and I began dating again. The next day, when we visited my mom together, she seemed to sense something and said, I'm so happy for you both. I might be biased. But you really do make a perfect couple. She smiled brightly, tears glistening in her eyes. Seeing this, Emily also began to cry. I apologized to my mom for all the terrible things I'd said and promised to make it up to her with all the love and care she deserved. My mom looked a bit surprised but then smiled, looking a little embarrassed. I kept my word, adjusting my work schedule so that I could visit her frequently without neglecting my responsibilities. Although the surgery was successful, my mom's muscle strength had weakened significantly due to her prolonged hospital stays. So she needed some time for rehabilitation. But she had always been a hard worker. Her recovery progressed so well that even Dr. Anderson was surprised. 3 weeks after the surgery, she was able to leave the hospital without any complications. During the time leading up to my mom's discharge, I had been reflecting on my future. I had started my system company mainly as a quick way to gain independence and make money. But the initial spark that led me to study in this field was the desire to create a system that even someone like my mom, who wasn't tech-savvy, could easily use. That was my true passion, and I had lost sight of it, reducing my work to nothing more than a means to earn money. Realizing this, I decided to focus on developing new systems and starting new projects. My goal is to create something that truly helps people in need. When I shared my new direction with Emily, she smiled and said, "That's so like you, Alex. I think it's wonderful." She supported me wholeheartedly. In the early days of my company, there were times when I felt overwhelmed by the uncertainty of the path ahead. But now, with Emily by my side, lighting the way, I could confidently take each step forward. 6 months after my mom's discharge, Emily and I got married. Surrounded by the love and support of so many people, we were truly happy. Well, Emily, I guess I really am your mom now, even if it's just in name. I'm looking forward to everything that's to come. My mom said with a warm smile. Yes. I'm looking forward to it too, Mom. Emily replied, tears welling up in her eyes. Both Emily's father and I were moved to tears by their exchange. Even though they laughed at us for crying, both Emily and my mom had tears streaming down their cheeks too. From now on, Emily and I will support each other as husband and wife, as a family. We both had lonely childhoods and experienced moments of disconnect with our families, but we also knew the depth of the love we received. Because of that, Emily and I are determined to build a warm and loving home together. There will be times when the journey feels overwhelming, times when it would be easy to give up if faced alone. But with someone by your side, it's different, everything feels more manageable. We know that by supporting each other, we can be much stronger than when we were on our own.